Cool. Let's see here. You didn't remind me.
I'm just about to right now. Dude, I was coming in.
I'm so sure.
I was even
That was how
say
you're gonna
10:40.
sabotage me.
Never.
Guys, you may ask questions. I don't know how many questions you'll have throughout the course of it. That's kind of what I'm hoping, is that you'll ask me something that I didn't think of. That would be super. So please feel free to do that. Upon picking this topic, I was initially very excited because education is kind of the cornerstone of what I do, nutrition and lifestyle coaching, etc. So it's pretty important. People come to me wanting to finally understand why some things did or didn't work in the past and how to move forward and learn how to do these things for themselves in the future. So I've somehow managed to put myself in that super unsexy land of like, let's figure out how to live sustainably that everyone says is very hard sell. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So I was excited. I was like, oh my God, I get to finally see what the data says about this thing that I place pretty high importance on. And then I was like, oh man, like maybe this is a cop-out. Crap. Regardless, I kind of stuck with it. But I thought the best way to take you through today would be to kind of take you on the journey that I went, you know, and kind of how my process of thinking went so that you can, you know, maybe we'll land in different places. But that's what I'd like to conclude with, is just to see if you guys can determine if this is important for you and your practice. Okay, so obviously I got an opinion, but you know, we're being scientists, all right? Speaking of kind of tying this into why I care, so in Elizabeth's conversation a couple of days ago, she has to do that exercise. We had nutrition pet peeves. My nutrition pet peeve has like nothing to do with the client side. Like nothing to do with getting questions about keto, intermittent fasting, etc. I just don't care very much about that land, because that land's always going to be there. People are always going to get lost in that land. And so I feel at this stage, at least in my career, it's a waste of my energy to really devote a lot of time to it. So I kind of picture myself as being there when they're ready to look up. When maybe they've gone through so many iterations of these things, they're like, wait a second, something's not working. Maybe I need to kind of look outside of this world. I want to be there when they're ready for it. So that's kind of how I've framed my coaching practice. I'm pretty open about that, and weirdly enough, people will come in when they know what it is that you're doing and when they're ready for it. Super cool. And why I get kind of into the nutrition education specific piece of it is because the pet peeve I have is on the practitioner side, the coach side, the nutritionist side. It actually does really frustrate me that collectively in that industry, and I won't necessarily say in this room, I don't like to make assumptions, but generally not in this room, but we do see this a ton, creating just generations of people who don't know how to live between diet strategies and beyond them, right? So we're so into getting them those short-term results, buy-in. We got to get them to buy in. We got to get them to buy in, but we're not looking at the other side of the equation. Yeah, okay, but like what happens when they stop working with you? Are they equipped to continue this in the future, right? Or did they even know that that was a short-term strategy? And I think that there's a lot of pieces that play a role in this. But I'll probably use the little remote there. That'll be helpful. Cool. So nicely enough, the data supports me on this one. We're super good at helping people lose weight. Look at that. Studies. Lots of them. You can look them up. I cited them properly. Not so good at long-term weight loss success. This is like kind of obvious, okay? But this is kind of where we're at, right? Like everyone's super confused. Arguably, there's never been a time when there's been more information available for people. You've never been able to find more information, but very few people know how to clarify it and apply it to what's important for them. There's more confused than ever. Cool. Preaching the choir, echo chamber. You with me? Great. This is why I think it's so important. So maybe it's 40 to 70% of people trying to lose weight at any point in time. That's wild. You guys have probably come across this statistic at some point. I understand there's a lot of variation between 40 to 70, okay? Even 40%. That's almost half of our people, dude. Like that, I'm triggered, okay? Like already, I'm like fired up about this. Like this is whack. Why is this happening? There's never been more coaches, never been more information, never been more programs, certifications. What is going on here? So the question I started with was, does education drive weight loss? That's pretty cool, right? Safe space. Just get a little interaction here. Do you guys think that education drives weight loss? Definitely yes, raise your hand. And by the way, you all get to be right at some point today. Isn't that great? So good. Okay, maybe you're considering it. Safe space. Nice, okay. Probably not. Probably not. Okay, perfect. This is exactly what I wanted, okay? I did. I came in and I was like, hell yeah, it does. Duh. Teach the people. So very quickly, upon coming to that question, I realized that there are some things I need to consider, okay? Number one, what do we mean by education? How do we define that? Cool. Thanks for the affirmation, guys. What other factors might be influencing the impact? So when you look at studies, like, is nutrition education isolated as an intervention? Or does it sometimes come with social support? Does it sometimes come with self-monitoring? Does it sometimes come with exercise? I didn't know. I know how to read a study yet. How does duration or time? This is something that kind of a little bit down the road, I was like, maybe it's not as important on the front end. Maybe it's more important on the back end. I don't know. We'll look into it. Because that's where I pretty much ended up. I was like, am I even asking the right question? I don't know. Maybe. Should I be asking adherence? Should I be asking more time domain? But that's okay, because this is where I started. So I was like, all right, let's widen up the field here. So what effect, if any, does education have on the weight loss equation? Good place to start. So this was one of the first studies we went over, right? So you guys should be familiar with it. If you watched the Mongo videos, I'm just kidding, you guys all did. The very first thing that I actually took from this, though, my very first thought was like, how'd they get these guys to follow these diets for a year? Like, that's kind of where my head goes. Maybe I started out as a young coach with a lot of like rebellious clients, but I'm always thinking like, how to get people to do what they want? How do you get people? Like, that's kind of what. Right. But you're right. But that's where I went because adherence wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Like, it surprised me actually how good it was. And so I was like, okay, so what did they do? Well, they went to 1-hour classes led by an RD for 8 weeks. So they're learning something for an hour every single week. That's pretty cool. All right. And they're going through like, enter the zone. Those can be kind of compelling sometimes if you're in that place, right? And we know it's 300, my population that I try to target, premenopausal, cool. We had, the minus 4.7 kilograms over a year, like, cool, at least you didn't gain, that's, it's at least something. But that's, again, what I was looking at was I was like, whoa, cool. So they actually, like, adhered to this stuff. That's super interesting to me, right? Don't get too excited, all right? Because, first of all, we don't actually know if they adhered. It was 24-hour recalls at 3 points, right? I did kind of highlight the no continuing education because they noted waning adherence over the course of the study. And I was like, is that related to no longer having that connection, the education piece, something? I don't know. Thought it was interesting. And then they literally admitted, lack of valid assessment of individual adherence. Cool. Thank you so much. And then I just kind of giggled because I was looking at the tables and like what they were eating, and they had all 4 diet groups, and they had the progression of their intake over months. And I mean, even just like taking averages, like they were all reporting like 1,500 to 1,600 calories for 12 months. And I was like, oh, I'm so sure. So sure. So all right, this was dipping my toe into the, okay, is it playing a role? Let me just keep looking, okay? So this one I enjoyed. Stay with me. I'm not going too far off topic here. But this was one done out of Japan, okay? And I loved it because it actually had education as one of the primary interventions, and we had a little bit of a longer time frame. So we went in for 6 months, directly intervening, 29 hours, okay? And then they had a 9-month maintenance program. They kind of still kept touching on it, so for a total of 7 hours. Dope. Love it. We had a pretty even split. Kind of veered off here because the average age here is 60. Jeb, look alive. What was super interesting, body weight in the intervention group on the left, control group on the right. We went down minus 1.8 kilograms versus minus 0.6. Body fat percent, minus 1.7% in the intervention group versus minus 0.6. So for my specific question, it's okay. I kept it in here though, because this is where I'm starting to kind of see like, all right, maybe I need to broaden this up. Maybe I'm asking kind of the wrong question from the beginning. So this is still a good learning process for me. What I wanted to point out here that I thought was super cool and is applicable for most of us in this room is the education intervention seems to have played a really cool role in baseline to 6 months. So what we're looking at here is the amount of people percentage-wise that they managed to get above 6,000 steps per day in intervention group. Control group, they weren't buying it. They didn't get the neat thing. And then eating vegetables at every meal. Cool, so they got 9.4% more from baseline to 6 months. And those guys were like, well, I'm still doing something, so maybe I'll try a little bit, but not really hard. Cool, does it hold over the 15 months? Because there's that time duration question. Apparently, it went up even higher to the 15 months. So we had 17.2% more amping up those steps. These guys, whatever, we don't care. Intervention for physical activity. So they got them bought into some physical activity as well. Again, not so much on the control group, okay? And then the final one, eating veggies, because like we got some movement on the eating veggies piece, okay? Still not super related to my question. I don't care, it was important. The only reason I'm including this table is because the body weight, the body fat and BMI was just so like meh, but it also wasn't particularly an intention of the study. The intention of the study was actually here. It was for cardiovascular measures. So I found that significant, right? In the baseline to 15 months of intervention group, like there was actually a reduction of cardiovascular, of total cholesterol, whereas there was an increase in the 15 months. If you guys ask me any further questions about the table or stats, like I will literally throw Paul off the mountain, so don't do that.
I got a question.
Yeah. Stand up, Paul. All right, so we got to kind of look at what I was considering here. It wasn't randomized controlled. Cool. It wasn't my population. For my particular question, not really much going on body weight difference. And then I also kind of was considering, the specific culture. Was the social community aspect, was any of that playing a role in the adherence to lysovitis? So again, just kind of trying to like paint a little picture here. I'll get a little more specific in a second. So this was when I came to the point of, all right, it's time for me to actually put some parameters around education. Does that exist? I didn't know. Great news. They're trying to do this in the literature, and it falls under this umbrella of health literacy. So this is basically a person's ability to take health information and apply it to specific decisions. Okay, now underneath this umbrella, we have two other areas. We have nutrition literacy. This is kind of what I started with, is like, does actually knowing how to read a food label, understand what nutrient-dense foods are, etc. What's that piece here, okay? And then the other aspect of the equation, which a lot of us probably play in, is actually food literacy. So being able to kind of extrapolate, like take the nutrition information to make choices and think a little more critically. So great, fantastic, it exists. I wasted a lot of time reading studies. Not really, I learned stuff. So here we go. We're finally getting a little more specific. We've got this study on nutrition literacy specifically. And just in terms of adherence to a healthy-unhealthy diet pattern. And they use a comparison of a Western diet and more Mediterranean diet. So Western diet being like more salt, more sugar, more red meat, etc. Mediterranean being more nuts, health stuff, fish, etc. Okay? Oils, thank you. So they use something called the INLIT. This is a specific instrument that has been created, nutrition literacy, and it's used a little bit more. We had a nice sized study population, about 386, and what they found is that nutrition literacy was the most significant predictor of diet pattern adherence. In fact, they found that with every percentage, like every point higher on this exam, there was like a 0.63%, like there was a really large chance of them having more adherence to these diets, which was cool. But now we're not really talking about my question, which was weight loss. We're talking more about adherence. But I was kind of thinking at this point, like maybe this should be the conversation. Isn't this kind of what we're all generally trying to do? If we know pretty well that adherence to whatever strategy you're doing long term works really well, maybe it should be the conversation. That being said, they gave me nothing on body fat, BMI, or weight, and I was like, that was super lame, because we don't even know. Like, it wasn't a start and end study, right? It was just gathering data and attaching it to that person's likelihood of engaging in that kind of dietary pattern eating, okay? Dope, moving along. This guy. Finally, I find something on specific nutrition literacy and weight loss. Good old Diane Rosenbaum, thank you for that. It's hard to find you. When I did, we had a good time. So we used the NVS, okay? So they actually interpreted, utilized information, standard FDA nutrition label. These kind of devices, measurement tools are pretty interesting. I looked into quite a few of them. Nice study, population size, 320. Weight loss, minus 9% from baseline. Very cool. Their baseline nutrition literacy significantly predicted the amount of weight that they would lose from starting point to 6 months in time. So basically, the higher nutrition literacy they scored on that exam, 0.63% better for every point. That's kind of compelling, in my opinion, right? I was like, cool, done, sold, see you in Costa Rica. Well, maybe. No control group, and the table was super confusing. No raw data. Yeah. Sorry? Oh, it was. Yes. No. It was 320 male and female group, and it was the average age was, I believe, between 39 to like 60. I want to say, because it was like my ideal population. So this was the study. This was kind of something that I left out. This was the main conclusion they found, other than what I pulled from it, is that poor nutrition literacy very much indicated poor outcomes, and they found that in a much higher proportionate amount among African Americans. So they gathered all like a pretty broad range of socioeconomic background, and they found that specifically in the African American population, it was much lower. Let me see here. No, because they only had one table. Yeah, I was like, what you trying to hide, Diane? I don't know. It was interesting. So that was like literally, I was like, oh, finally, so excited. And there wasn't even raw data. It was like standard deviation, bivariate correlation. Like I said, watch Paul, don't ask me anything more. But that's kind of where we're at here. So in my mind, I was thinking, all right, so now we've got all these devices, right, for measuring it. Are they accurate? I wanted to, I always want to see the specifics of it, right? So as of 2011, they did, I found systematic review, meta-analysis, another systematic review, I believe. And in 2011, we're at, cool, all of these instruments vary widely. Thank you, awesome. 2014, not much better. There's still no clear consensus in terms of the different instruments used, and they're analyzing thousands, right, from around the world, US, Japan, Germany, etc. 2018, got substantial variation. Great, wonderful, just gathering information, painting the picture here. So by this point, I was kind of wondering, like, all right, how do I ask a better question? Because if I can't find that correlation, or if I can't prove it, because my hunch is that time domain does play a pretty big role here. Arguably, there are some very compelling factors for shorter term weight loss, right, that we know work, but we just don't know that other side. We don't know how long that goes out. We don't know what's really happening over there. Maybe I should just be asking, like, does education play a role in long-term weight maintenance? That's where I'm at. That's kind of where I'm at, all right? Raba's like, no. Shut up, Raba. So, here's where I'm leaving it, all right? Because I got a bias, guys. Education works super well for me, okay? But that's my bias. I get people who really care about that. I really care about that. You tell me to do something, I'm literally going to be like, why? You tell me why I'm doing something, I'm like, cool, I'm in. Let's go. 2K row? Awesome, I'll throw up for you. It's fine. So here are the questions that it kind of leaves us with, because I think this has to be an individual reflection for us as coaches, right? If you got something that works, fantastic. If you include education and it works, great. If you don't include education and your people are still rocking at life for a long time, awesome. Not judging you, only a little bit. Do you consider the temperament of your clients, okay? This, like, how would we like study this? Like, have everyone do like the 4 tendencies and then like see how they adhere to like a protocol? Like, I don't know. But if you do have someone who struggles with adhering and you tend to, here's what we're doing here, here's what we're doing here, and it's really clear, but they're like not doing it, it might be something to consider that all you have to do is explain why, and they might be like, oh, okay, cool. And again, this plays a huge role because my clients tend to come in and they don't get that short-term benefit because like they usually want to lose weight or lose fat, and I'm like, sorry girl, like you don't get to do that for a little while. Like we got to do some stuff first. So it kind of flies in the face of a lot of traditional models. But if I can get them bought in and I can manage expectations, I can tell them what the track is, I can tell them what to expect, and then it starts happening, they're like, whoa, cool, this is in. I've got them for a long time. And then they're graduating and they're like, oh, I like know how to adult. That's cool. That's cool. Great. This plays a really, really big role. Client life cycle, from when they come into your care, when do they leave? Do you know? Is it that awkward, like, they kind of saw some results and everything's going well and you're not even sure how you can help them anymore, and then they have to like send that email and it's like, oh, a budget, a house, HVAC, nah, you know? Because if you don't have a system for disseminating this stuff, if you don't kind of really know what you want them to know, it's going to be really hard to make it happen. And you're going to probably lose people that you wish you had given like the really important stuff, but we got kind of distracted by the minutia. Again, I don't like to make assumptions. I think it's a little less applicable for this room, but that's what I think in terms for a large portion of our industry, right? So something to consider. Does something need to change in the way that we approach and work with the clients to make that happen? Because if you don't have a system, it's not going to happen. And this is something personal for you to ask. What do your people, what do you really want them to know? What do they need to know from when they leave your care? What do you think they need to know in order to be successful and not find another coach, not find another diet, not find another strategy? That's how I kind of define success, right? What do you think that is? And hold on, I won't have time to come up with that model for you, but I totally had it in my back pocket. What questions do you have for me, guys? I put gold on there because everyone kept telling me not to. Tommy.
I had the same bias as you, and I think there's a fabulous study.
Oh, come on.
One you should use.
Oh.
So the bold study is in New Zealand.
Okay.
And they took people and they put half of them on a whole foods plant-based diet, so a low-fat, high-quality vegan diet. The diet, I believe, is irrelevant.
Yeah.
They were put on the diet for 3 months. They lost 26, 27 pounds. A year later, they've maintained all of that weight loss.
See, that's exactly what I saw a little bit.
My belief is because they taught them how to cook.
Yeah.
They taught
Yeah.
them how to cook the food. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering about education, like information versus skills.
Exactly, which is the nutrition literacy versus the food literacy piece. And that's kind of what I had a hard time distinguishing between, is because I kind of started with nutrition literacy because I think that we tend to make a lot of assumptions about what people know. Like, we assume that people know what a macro is. We assume that they know how to read a food label to some extent, right? But do they know how to extrapolate that data for themselves? And food literacy, arguably, like that's banked. But sometimes I think we spend almost too much time there, if you're like a well-rounded coach, maybe, equipping them with the skills, but then they don't know what to do there, like what specific things. So thank you. I would have loved to have that. I would have loved to have all this like publication study that like access that a lot of you guys had. That would have been super helpful. I thought it was SciPub, and I like registered for something weird, and then I didn't ask because I hate asking. Someone else had a question. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, so
Oh my God, I'm sweating.
do you think about reverse causality at all? Like, if people are more nutritionally literate, were they more likely to undergo weight loss previously?
So I'm trying to think about the specific one I saw where they had the entire population of the study was people who had lost weight multiple times. And I'm gonna have to refer back to that because it wasn't super. They maintained. I think that's what it was because I did almost actually put that in there. Because the whole purpose was to see long-term weight maintenance, which I was like, this is very much related. This is closer to what I'm looking for in terms of time domain. So the success from that study was that they actually did maintain, and the amount that it went up was super negligible. But for people who had dieted so many times, had done, they striated in terms of people who had lost like more than 10 pounds, more than 50 pounds, and like 3 different groups. And overall, it was like, they kind of maintained. And at first I was like, what? And I was like, oh wait, no, that's a win because they maintained. That's dope. But I didn't use it because, I don't know.
Look into anything education about environment, like even what Tommy said, cooking, it's like that's a skill that they can last in our current environment. It's just like the walking and the physical activity. It's just like it's because of where the new population stuff about environment. Because like we talk with Jeb all the time, and we've talked about it. Like
Yeah,
every single
yeah.
fucking matter.
Huge part.
And it's like they just cook. Like the diet doesn't matter. So is there anything on that other than?
I don't know if Tommy has ever found anything, but it was like pulling eye teeth just to get closer. And it is because I started with this weight loss. I don't know why. I was like, well, we always study weight loss. I'm studying weight. Like, I don't give a shit about weight loss, to be honest. Like, for my population, very little shit's given. Sorry, Susan. But that, like, I really care about adherence. I think it's so cool because of long-term implications,
Yeah,
right?
that's why I was like, what would the percentages of weight loss? What was that with the cooking? Because like Jeb's was like the mindfulness was like 7% without even doing it. Like, what did they see? Like,
Yeah, it was like 15, but they were all over 100 kilos and they lost
Yeah.
12 kilos.
and I wonder if those compound. Like, what did they proper?
I think they just got like standard nutrition education.
You
Like,
also
Yeah.
don't-
And that's where a lot of mine came in.
Yeah.
Standard nutrition education.
And I'm always like, what does that mean?
you don't-
I hate that when they don't specify. Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
don't do all that. Like that's what I mean. That's why I'm saying does it compound? Because like I know your stuff. Like you don't just teach
Right.
providers that. Like, you
At
do
all.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the difficult thing, and that's why I was curious to see if I could isolate this one variable, because when I bring someone in, I'm covering all of my bases, but I'm from the front biasing which one I think will resonate most with that client, if that makes sense. So like, I won't forget you, but so if I've got someone who's real strong, like questioner, for lack of a better term, I kind of like lead everyone to be a questioner. I almost like try and like be like, okay, so you've gone through a lot of these experiences. Like, I bet you would really like to understand why this worked. I bet if you knew why I was telling you to do something, you'd probably be more likely to do it, right? Like, so I can be a little bit leading there, but then again, like most people will be like, yeah, for sure. So I'm like, all right, cool. So we're gonna explain this stuff. But if I get someone who's so overwhelmed and like doesn't have any follow through, like has no, like just does the 2-week thing and then off, I'm gonna give them way less information. I'm gonna give them like 1 or 2 things that then they can like finally get that like how good it feels to like actually do what they say they're gonna do. And I'll catch them when they start to kind of fall off. But like in that case, I'm like maybe giving a lot of some explanation, but I'm having to like individualize it. Does that kind of?
Yeah, like a coach, you're a good coach. but like that's like you.
Yeah, but it's not always education, but it is. Yeah.
Tools, and I'm gonna use this tool for this job. That's why I always ask like the presenters like, what's your tool? But like you're like I use a lot of whatever one at the time and get results.
Yeah, I just try
That's how
to.
it's studied.
But I would say education and systems are like, if I had to pin down the most important ones, like it's education and systems, and they'll kind of like switch back and forth. Yes.
It was my fault. I should have pointed you to this research earlier, and I'm mad I didn't think of it.
Uh-oh.
No, it's my fault. I think that including garden-based interventions in little kids.
Oh, so the adolescents, I did come across a lot of. It was super compelling in adolescents. The only reason I left it out is because it wasn't my population group, and I felt bad going rogue. But the studies that I found on nutrition education with adolescents were super cool and very significant. That's what you're referring to, right?
What is that? Like,
Yeah.
that's why I was-
Yeah, I know. I told you. I like to follow rules, guys. He said population group, and I was like, okay. Yeah. No, it wasn't. I didn't like. I only like emailed twice, and then I just like freaked out on my own a lot. It was super cool.
So this, I don't think this is something you find in the research, but something I'm curious about is you said there's more information than ever,
Yeah.
and I think that how do you deal with people who are getting so much information thrown at you? How are you teaching them to decipher like what's bullshit
Yeah.
that's real.
Yeah.
Because like on Instagram, you can tailor all of your information to meet what you want to believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious how you teach or educate your people.
Not to give a simple answer, but I find that most time people are super confused because they're looking here at, oh my gosh, this worked for this person, this worked for this person. And so I literally just have them like, all right, cool, what's going to work for me specifically? And if I can get just people to start asking better questions about like what they're noticing, what their needs are, what they want, then they're gonna, over time with me, get better at siphoning through, oh, that might have worked for them, but I'm not like a shift worker, or I'm not like trying to do the CrossFit stuff, whatever. That's the answer. Yeah. Oh, and they love it because they love being able to like question but actually understand like why. So great. My ego just gets real good. Yeah.
So first of all, I love the in-between strategies, diet strategies and beyond. Like, great thing. I'm gonna steal it and not credit you.
Cool.
Appreciate that.
That's pretty classic of you actually.
Yeah,
So
pretty much right on
yeah.
brand, so.
on brand.
The Japanese study, I didn't.
Yeah.
Now, was there a mean BMI? And did they say like what kind of Japanese population it was?
Yes. So
Just because
it was an older population. I was gonna pull this so you guys have it. But, it was an older population. I think it's gonna be here. Right? Yeah. So it's gonna be this one. So what was your first question?
First, was there a mean BMI? Oh, there
Yes.
was.
Yeah. There absolutely was. I don't have it here.
Okay. Because my question would be like
A little bit leaner.
In that right.
Mhm,
Is the weight loss is
Yeah,
a big deal?
exactly. Which is why I didn't really care about that, because I was like, number one, they're not really trying to lose weight,
Yeah.
but they do have some cardiovascular risk factors. So I was like, well, again, culturally, at that age and generation, like probably not so big. So I can look it up, but
Yeah, because I thought that was interesting to like see like something as simple as like an intervention of eating more vegetables.
Like, this is
that
so
compounding
significant for
factor
me.
us might be so much bigger.
so significant, which is why I included it. Is that I was just like, that's cool. All right, we like this. We like the veggies thing. Alcohol. I pull up most.
Will there be smokers and drinkers too?
Um,
I don't know if it's
we need to find the starting data for that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that's what I. Yeah. It kind of like compounded. That's why I was pulling those out. I was like, whoa, like that's very cool that over time it actually got better. And I'm wondering if it was like a feedback kind of thing where they're like, oh, feeling better. This is cool. It's getting easier. I'm learning how to do it better. So. Do you consider the temperament? How do we control for temperament? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And very community. So that's kind of what I was thinking from the beginning as well. So, Rabba, my man, give it to me. What you got?
There's a really interesting model on behavior change professor outside out of Stanford called BJ Fogg. It's called the Fogg behavior model. And what it states is that behavior change only happens when motivation, ability, and a prompt all are present simultaneously.
Cool.
And so, kind of building off what Tommy said, there's also this information fallacy as well, but I won't get into that. But ultimately, do you think that if we can land on the semantics of information being education and skill acquisition being separate, do you think that if you gave somebody the
cooking more, and then they can start that flywheel of competency versus telling them or educating them on things? Because in terms of the flywheel of competency, you do it. Once you do it, you feel successful because you did it. You want to do it more because you felt successful. The more you do it, the more competent you get. The more competent you get, the more you want to do it. The more you want to do it, you feel. Does that make sense? What I'm saying? And so I think. Do you think that skill acquisition? So instead of telling your clients about food or education, say,
Okay,
hey,
okay,
here's
yeah,
3
yeah.
meals to cook. I'm going to show you how
Yeah.
to cook them. That skill acquisition.
Yeah.
Do you think that would be way more valuable in terms of driving the behavior change versus educating them with information?
I think that's the argument, dude. I think you just landed on it.
I think that's the argument, dude.
That's the
I think you just
model
landed on
for
it
so many
because
coaches.
that
It's the model outside
for
of
so
skill.
many
fitness.
coaches.
Everybody.
Is they
Skill and
give
they
the
give the meal
skill.
plan.
They
So
give the
that's the
skill and
question,
they
is
give the
that
meal
successful?
plan.
But that's no
So
longer the
that's
question
the
I'm
question:
asking.
is that
I don't
successful?
care.
That's
I'll
no
tell
longer
my
the
clients
question I'm
from day
asking.
one.
Because I don't
I
care.
don't
I'll tell my clients this
care
from day
very
one.
much what's
I
happening
don't
in 6
care
months with you.
very much what's
Depending on
happening in
class.
6
I don't
months
care as
with
much.
you.
I
depending
really,
on the
really
client.
care
I don't
if you're
care as
as
much.
successful
I
slash more
really, really
successful
care
2
if
years
you're
from
as
now when
successful
you've
slash
left
more
this
successful
program.
2 years from
Like,
now
that's
when
what,
you've left
but I get,
this program.
I get to say that.
Like
because
that's
it's my
what,
thing.
but I get to,
That's my-
I get to
that's
say
my
that because it's
factor.
my
So,
thing.
I think that
That's my
why
that's my
this
moving
is
factor.
even
So
something we
I
can
think
have
that
a
that's
conversation about
why
is
this
because
is
arguably a
even
lot of
something we
coaches
can have a
believe in just
conversation about is
equipping
because
the skills,
arguably a lot of
and here's
coaches
what
believe
to
in just
do,
equipping with the skills
without explaining
and here's what
why.
to do
Is that
without
kind of-
explaining
That's
Not
what
really,
True
but kind of.
Again,
Is
like,
that
their
kind of
True
it?
Coach kind of does
Really,
that,
but-
like their
Son of
habit
a
building,
gun.
like again.
You're not. Yeah, I guess the
Yeah.
Help me do better.
the
Help me do
bifur.
better.
No, you're not doing
Let me
that.
do
I'm
better.
probably
Help
not
me do
articulating
better.
myself. I'm saying the bifurcation
Yeah.
between education being synonymous with information
Okay.
versus skill acquisition.
Yes.
Would you be way better off teaching your clients
Yeah, so the
skill
nutrition versus
acquisition,
the-
like taking them to the grocery store and showing them how to grocery shop versus like showing
That
them
is
the
actually
veg?
part of education, though.
That's what I'm saying.
That
I
is
had
actually
to make
part
that
of
bifurcation
education,
at the
though.
beginning. Like there's education
Yeah.
slash synonymous information, and then there's skill acquisition.
And
I'm
then I'm
bifurcating
charging
those two.
$1,000 for that.
Is
Like
this-
you
you
gotta
wanna-
Yeah,
get rid of
it's,
it.
it's just basically, especially if you're working remotely, I'm just asking for strategies from other people.
Yeah.
Like the study I talked about, they
Yeah.
physically had them in the kitchen and showed them how to cook.
Yeah.
So when you're working remotely with clients, how do you, just if you have thoughts on how you might teach those, get those skills across, I guess.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
Ben, like,
yeah.
talks
So,
about how he kinda does, like, the shotgun method with
you know how Ben
clients,
like
right?
talks about how he
You throw
kind
it
of
and
does like the
see what
shotgun
sticks.
method with clients, right? You throw it and see what sticks.
Right? Like, I think my method is kind of like a
Right?
titrated
Like I think
shotgun
my method is kind of like a
I'm
titrated
gonna end up
shotgun
throwing a lot at
method.
them, but I
Like
kinda parse it
I'm gonna
out,
end up
right?
throwing a lot at them,
So,
but I kind
a
of
big
parse
part
it
of what
out,
we do,
right?
like, we'll spend
So
an entire
a big part of what we do, like
on,
we'll spend an entire module
systems.
on
So setting up planning
systems.
systems, life
So
systems,
setting
et
up
cetera.
planning
And then we evolve
systems,
that,
life
and we'll,
systems,
like,
etc.
you now know
And then we
how
evolve that, and
to
we'll like you now know
acquire,
how
plan, and prepare
to
foods.
acquire,
Now we're
plan,
gonna
and
work a little bit
prepare
more on
foods.
what that actually looks
Now
like for
we're going to
you.
work a little bit
And
more
that
on
again is
what
gonna
that
be
actually
evolved
looks like
step
for
by
you,
step. So as
and
far
that
as,
again
like,
is going to be
skill piece
evolved
of it,
step by step. So as far
a
as
lot
like
of
the
times
skill
it's
piece
just-
of it,
it's just about
a lot of times
simplifying
it's
and getting people out of their
just
own
about
way.
simplifying and getting people out of their own
I mean, I
way.
have literally listed, like,
So
here's
in the
equipment we
kitchen,
need, or
I
just
mean,
go
I
get
have
an air
literally
fryer.
listed like, here's the equipment you need,
Yeah,
or just go get an air fryer.
Here
Yeah,
is
good.
what a meal
Here
might look
are
like, and here's
here is what a
kind of fits with
meal
you, 'cause I'll
might
get them
look
to-
like,
I'll
and
gather
here's
what they're
what kind of
doing,
fits with you,
and
because
we'll
I'll get
literally
them
make
to
certain
I'll gather what
tweaks
they're
that still
doing,
feels
and we'll literally just make
comfortable,
certain
it might
tweaks
be a
that it
little
still
more rounded,
feels
and then we have
comfortable.
really
It might
simple
maybe a little
recipes
more
that
well
they'll
rounded,
do
and
that
then we have really simple recipes that they'll do that are because I sucked at cooking at the beginning of this process for myself. I was like set aside that Sunday. We going in the kitchen. We're gonna go down. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this recipe. Oregano, and I never even liked the recipes, and I was like, this is like not good. So I teach them how to cook strategy-wise. We really steer away from recipes until people are like,
how we implement it, so I don't teach
that
them
kind of answers your question as far as how we
but
implement it. So I don't teach them one-on-one, but it is action by action, and we'll kind of like evolve that over time.
Well, he got it from me.
Yeah, he's just like.
Well, he got it from me.
He's like, I'm gonna teach you how to use a knife.
Yeah,
Because that's what it is. Like, how do I
Yeah,
how do I
exactly.
how do I slice an onion? How do I fry fish? Like,
And also, it's like, what a great time to be alive.
And also,
For
it's
my
like
people
what a
early
great
on,
time to be alive.
I'm
I mean,
trying to get them to
for my
prep
people
as
early on,
little as
I'm
possible.
trying to get them to
Go
prep
to
as
that already
little as
cut veggie
possible.
section.
Go
Find
to
the
that
meal prep
already
company,
cut
because
veggie
guess what? We've
section.
got time,
Find the meal
and
prep
when their
company.
bandwidth
Because guess what?
is
We've got
less
time,
overwhelmed,
and
we're
when
gonna
their
be stepping
bandwidth
that up.
is
Oh, you wanna
less
save
overwhelmed, we're going to be
$5?
stepping that up.
Whatever.
Oh, cool, you want to save
Chicken knife, you know
$5?
So
Whatever.
I
Go cook
think
your own
there's
chicken knife.
so
You know what I
many
mean?
tools now to make
So
life
I just
easier,
think there are
and most
so
people
many
just hold
tools now to
themselves
make
back
life
from using
easier,
them for really
and most
weird
people just
reasons.
hold themselves
So we'll,
back
like,
from
talk
using them
about
for
that.
really weird
And we'll say,
reasons.
like, you don't have to
So we'll
keep
like
doing
talk
this,
about
that's fine,
that,
but right
and
now,
we'll say
when I
like,
want
you
you
don't
to
have
be
to keep doing
executing,
this. That's fine.
like,
But right now, when I want you to be executing, like we're gonna do some
Jeff,
Dallas
I'm
barbecue.
so sorry, but Dean was going.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna do the
Jeff,
same
I'm
thing
so
you're
sorry
gonna do. I mean,
for
I'll
keep
just
going.
cut him off afterwards.
Yeah. So you want to come here after me?
Well, you just like we can lead this conversation. Like, when I
What you
hear
guys
that,
talk-
I hear yours thing, and I made a joke about $1,000, but then I think socioeconomic status, privilege, all that shit. Because like people can't like you talk about the African American population, that whole shit show. Like that's like
Food deserts.
Yeah.
like that's why there's so many co-founding factors with all this stuff, and that's why it's cool to hear yours because I want to know what you do. Because like obviously that's not scalable, and Ben talks about macro and changing the world. Like
It's
the
not
answers aren't
scalable yet.
too fucking clear cut.
It's
Yeah.
not scalable yet.
The one-on-one
Yeah,
stuff I
it's
do
not-
is
The one-on-one stuff I I do is like I'm finally kind of have that a little bit more sorted, and obviously the next step is to scale. But I'm still like I've been doing this like 10 years. I'm still a baby coach. Like so, the scalability is absolutely on my radar.
Are you changing anything based on
Is
this?
automated.
Because I know you're biased. Obviously, you said it, but like, looking at this, are you changing anything?
Um,
Okay.
And I was like, cool, like, what can I take out? I'm like, no,
And I was like, cool, like, what can I take out? I'm
like,
like,
no, I do. And I'm always evolving and
really
upgrading,
proud of
but, like, right now,
what I do. And I'm always evolving and upgrading, but like right now in consideration, like only ever simplify. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh.
What would make you
Yeah,
change?
absolutely. Oh my gosh. I love that question.
Don't remind me of that one. Okay?
Let me
Because-
don't remind me of that one, okay? Because
especially coming up in kind of the way that I did.
especially
in
coming
nutrition,
up in
super
kind of the way
insecure,
that I did in nutrition,
not
which is super
university,
insecure,
very
not
afraid to do
university,
any harm, et cetera,
very afraid to
and
do
kind of just,
any
like, going
harm,
through
etc.
those steps,
And kind of just like going through
it's
those
one of
steps
the-
and always.
maybe one of the biggest.
It's
There's
one
a
of
lot.
the
one of the biggest
maybe one
impacts
of the
I've seen
biggest.
on my
There's been a lot.
effectiveness
One of
as
the
a
biggest
coach
impacts I've seen on my effectiveness
is
as a coach
having more
is
belief that what
having
I do
more
works.
belief
I've really
that what
seen
I
that
do
directly
works.
outlay in terms
I've
of
really
client
seen that
adherence
directly
and
outlay in
client
terms of
results.
client
Something
adherence
super
and
cool
client
psychological
results.
going on
Something
there,
cool,
but I used to
super
be
cool
like,
psychological
yeah,
going
no,
on
this
there.
might
But I used to be
happen,
the like,
this might
yeah, you know,
happen,
like this might
yeah,
happen,
it's like,
like
no,
this
like,
might
no,
happen,
like,
like
you go
yeah,
out and
it's
walk,
like,
you
well,
sleep
like
more.
no, like you go out and walk, you sleep more.
Like,
If you
unless
actually follow
something
the
else is
nutrition
going on,
protocols,
which we will
like
totally assess, like,
unless something
you
else
can
is going on,
expect
which
to,
we will
like, feel
totally
better. Like,
assess,
this is
like
cool, and
you
this
can
is hammer.
expect to
So-
like feel better, like this is cool, and
Yeah,
here's a hammer.
my
So
question's irrelevant. Like I
that
think.
kind of.
Well, no, like because like I was like
Okay.
I was thinking for myself.
What was it?
like,
I wanna
yeah,
hear you
what
say
would
something
make you
stupid.
change, But I'm the same.
Oh,
As
what
you. It's
would
like,
make you change?
and like I'm confident in that.
Always
and, like,
Oh, what
like,
would make me change?
Yeah, but like at the end of the day,
Always
I'm doing
changing.
What I do, and like I'll say, oh yeah, I get that, but like fuck
Yeah.
you.
No, I'm
Because
always.
like I know it works.
Absolutely.
But like
No,
that's a
I'm-
bad
I'm
way of
always-
thinking. But like that's why I was asking, what did
absolutely
you look
always
for?
changing.
'Cause I look for like big fucking red flags, like and a lot of them, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm stupid. But like one red flag, I'm like, eh.
I've had so many. Yeah, you know, I'm absolutely.
I've had so many.
always
Yeah, you know,
changing.
I'm
Always
absolutely
upgrading.
always changing,
For sure.
always
Go
upgrading.
back to Gary's pet
For sure.
peeve of people trying to do too much too fast.
Yeah.
My pet peeve is people overselling.
Yeah.
this again, like,
Yeah, oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking.
It drives me.
Yeah,
Because like you look
It-
at
because
research
it doesn't-
on natural versus shotgun.
Yeah.
and it
it's
doesn't-
so bad.
Like it's equivocal.
Everybody quits the peeing stuff early because they're like. "You're just
Everybody
gonna let me
quits the
drink
peeing
water?"
stuff
Like,
early because they're like, you're just gonna let me drink water
Yeah,
like
so
first
there's
2
one
weeks.
thing at a
Is that what you're
time
talking
stuff
about?
Versus the shotgun approach. If you look at the research, nothing wins.
Yeah.
But think about that population. It's an extremely unvoted. They're not paying. They're being.
Yeah.
So even inside of that situation,
Yeah.
the sequential model of habit change doesn't outperform
Yeah.
just giving people all the information.
Yeah.
So it's really people have that as the cornerstone of their practice. That's a terrible cornerstone to have.
I'm gonna push back a little bit.
I'm gonna push back a little.
So here's my pushback on that, and I think it's.
So
going
here's
to
my
come down to
pushback on that,
systems,
and I think
probably
it's going to come down to
loses
systems,
out.
which
And the
probably
specific
loses out.
person.
And the
If
specific
you
person.
give someone like
Because
me and a lot of
if
the
you
female
give
clients that I
someone
get,
like me and a
all
lot
the
of the
things at
female
once,
clients
they're
that I
so
get,
demoralized.
all the things at once, they're so
I'm here.
demoralized. I don't think I ever.
Well, let's just put it this way.
Well,
when I got one
let's
of
just
your
put it this
emails,
way.
about, like, doing
When
the
I got
glucose
one of your
monitoring, you
emails
totally identify,
about
one
like doing
thing,
glucose
and
monitoring,
you're,
and you
really
totally
clear.
identify
I
like
still,
one thing,
weirdly
and you're like
found
really
myself
clear.
in, like,
I
the
still
aisle
like
of CVS
weirdly
crying
found
because I
myself
couldn't
in like the
figure out
aisle of CVS crying because I couldn't figure out which glucometer to get.
I thought
Maybe.
Amazon.
You're shooting
Maybe.
Stack that affiliate link, baby.
I'm so dead. I'm so dead. It's so possible, but here's what I'm saying is like that. It maybe has a little bit to you.
Well, and also, but it's also like that's kind of my.
Well, and also, but it's also like that's kind of
I
my
get to go a little bit slower
systems
with it
wise.
because
I
they're
get to go a
stuck
little
with
bit
me, man.
slower with
They're stuck
it
with
because
me at
they're
least 6
stuck
months.
with me, man. They're stuck with me at least 6 months.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. And there's someone who's so.
Yeah. And there's
overwhelmed
someone
by,
who's
like,
so
many things,
overwhelmed by like so many things that all of a sudden they get to clarify, which is 100%. Like that's also has influenced me a ton. Because early on in coach, I don't know how you avoid like not wanting to give them all the things. Like I think everybody kind of has to go through that first. But that's totally me. But like being so clear about this is what you do, this is what you do, and if you have
Yeah.
So what do you guys think? Because I'm with you,
Yes.
right? The way I run my business is very, very similar.
Okay.
Which I'll cover
So I see
tomorrow.
people.
What?
Like, so say someone needs to. You think that they can do 5 things at once, but you only give them one thing because you think that one thing.
Oh
is
yeah,
so-
totally different. Totally different.
I
Oh,
know
yeah,
that
no,
people
totally
like 1
different,
to
totally
5
different.
things
No.
that I think will work for them.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah.
you will see a lot of people right
Yeah.
now that will not give someone more than one thing to do at a time.
Okay, so
okay.
that's what I need.
Okay,
That's
so
what, no, so I'm talking
that's
about
what I
people who
needed.
really can
That's what.
only
No, 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 no.
handle
So I'm talking about
2 to
people
3
who really
things.
can only
And
handle
like
2
we're,
to 3
like, we're maybe
things.
gonna get some
And
movement on
like
those 2 to 3
we're
things
like we're
because they're
maybe
in that
gonna get
mindset
some
of just
movement
like,
on
oh
those
my
2
God,
to 3
like,
things because
is
they're in that
so
mindset of just like, oh my god, like
chaotic and
life
messy
is
that
so
at any more
chaotic
beyond
and
that, I'm gonna
messy
feel like I'm
that
failing,
at
so
any
then I'm
more
like,
beyond
that's
that,
it.
I'm gonna
That's
feel like I'm
Versus
failing.
getting
So then I'm like in that
divorced in
mindset.
there's
Yeah.
20 things.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
how do you evaluate that? Like, how do you evaluate that, and how do you evaluate? Because like, can you handle 20 things today, or is
Well,
it like
no, I
5?
just set up their environment so they can because they're in such a liminal moment. Whereas if you get a mom who has 3 kids, like,
Yeah.
then I'm like, dude, her life is so ingrained.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like, that's your.
I think we're kind of.
Yeah.
But like, how do you evaluate that?
I
Like,
think we're
obviously
kinda
like that's
same.
experience. But like, what's that? How do you know it's 2 questions
listen.
versus 20?
Listen.
Yeah, okay,
Listen.
okay. So you can just make an educated decision. Like that's again coaching.
To listen and take a lot of notes.
Like, so assessment, long
Well, look what they
assessment.
get done.
So it's like so assessment, long assessment.
Yeah,
And they
exactly.
crush all 5.
Assessment,
Yeah,
long
assess- yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But there's
Assessment
people that are
and then
long
adhere.
and wins, right?
Yeah,
They can
assessment
nail
and then
it,
adhere.
still just-
Assess,
you know what I mean? So
reflect,
it's just,
assess,
I just
assess.
wonder, like how, like it's just cool. Like maybe there's a better answer for knowing how many questions or things to get
System.
done.
Or you ask, hey,
It's-
how is this going for you?
Well,
What's
and-
less? How are you doing?
Yeah, and within my
Well,
system,
and-
like every
Yeah, and within my
point
system,
in the
like
program,
every
there's kind of something that
point in the
we're
program,
starting with,
there's kind of
and it's
something
so
that
scalable.
we're
So,
starting
like, I'll
with,
get people who are
and it's so
just like,
scalable.
listen,
So like
bro,
I'll
like,
get people who are
the
just like,
daily
listen,
actions.
bro,
Don't
like
worry about this,
the
don't worry
daily
about this, you're gonna
actions.
maybe this, and
Don't
no,
worry about
I
this.
need
Don't worry about this.
execute
You're
on
gonna
the
maybe
daily
this.
Someone
No,
who's,
I
like,
need you to
crushing it
execute
and
on the
really
daily
highly
actions.
motivated,
Someone who's
like,
like
I'm right,
crushing it and
cool.
really, really highly
Here's
motivated,
maybe an
like I'm right,
evolution of that
cool.
daily action, maybe a little bit
Here's
more.
maybe an evolution
And
of
then
that
we're
daily
gonna, like,
action,
I'm
maybe a
like,
little
hey,
bit
I
more.
should read this 'cause I think you're gonna
And
dig
then
it.
we're gonna like,
You're
I'm
just
like,
a
hey, I want you to
questioner.
read this because I think you're gonna dig it because you're such a questioner.
And then
Like
it
to know
just
what
it
you do.
scales, you know, and I get people
And
along
then
that-
it's just it
it's
scales,
so
you know, and I
much
get
managing
people along that.
expectations
It's
because I
it's
think
so
that
much managing
if people feel
expectations
like they're supposed
because
to
I
be doing all
think
these
that
things,
if people feel
and
like
they're
they're supposed to be doing all these
high achievers,
things
or the people
and they're
consistently
high
have not
achievers
followed
or
through,
the
they're
people have
cyclical
consistently
dieters,
kind of not
like,
followed
dude, this is
through,
gonna
they're
bring up
cyclical
all that
dieters,
stuff again.
like
It's
dude,
gonna be
this
them
is gonna
not
bring up
completing
all of that
again.
stuff
And I
again. It's
actually
gonna be
had to
them
start
not
them like,
completing
no, you
again.
actually do
And I
follow
actually had to
through
start
on
them at a
stuff.
point where I'm
You
like,
just have
no,
no
you actually do
practice.
follow through on
You
stuff.
don't
You
get
just
to
have
be
no
good at stuff.
practice
You
in
don't have
follow
any
through. You don't get to be
practice
good
doing
at
it. You
stuff.
don't have any practice
You don't
following.
have any
It's
practice
just like
doing it.
anything
You don't
else.
have any
Practice
practice
to
to
be
follow.
better, right?
It's just
Like,
like
kind of-
anything else. Practice to be
Yeah,
better,
no,
right?
I want
Like,
to
kind
know.
of-
Like, it's a cool conversation. It's like we're all saying the same thing ish.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a conversation that we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
to their research.
No, absolutely. That's why I was asking
Yeah,
both of you.
yeah, sorry, sorry, Dad.
Yeah,
Maybe
sorry,
motivational
shit,
interview, I know
yeah, sorry,
some
Dad.
people- Some people have that in week 2. Like, if
Oh, cool.
yeah, if you are
Oh,
using
cool.
motivational interview
Yeah.
tactics, and you kind of they're just kind of out of it, and they're giving you bullshit answers, you probably reached a point where they're not ready for anything else.
Yeah.
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 Well, I was just like, to think back to the time point of that
Yeah.
study, it's like, coming back to the whole point, it's like, what education do you need? Like, if it's as simple as just saying, like, here's some lean
Yeah.
protein, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
is it
Glad
that,
you asked.
that could be it, that could be the shot.
Yeah.
Well, if I could just
Yeah.
get 2 more minutes, I wanted to like.
Well, if I
whiteboard
could just
this out and
get
be like,
2 more
what do you
minutes,
guys
I wanted to like
think
whiteboard this
clients
out and be like,
should know?
what do you
Let's-
guys
Well, you're already
think
over time, you lost the
clients
vote
should
next
know?
week.
Let's just
Let's just go for, I'll go for another half an hour. Yeah, I'll disqualify you. Done.
Oh, put
So
filibuster.
Jeb, that's the question.
So that's the
I
Jeb.
did
That's
the
the
way that I
question.
did it.
That's it. And that's
Not
why I
as-
kind of ended in the way that I did it.
I
Is
think we have to
not
decide
as.
that, and we have to decide.
I think
as
we have to
coaches how
decide
much
that,
incorporate
and we
what
have to
think
decide
that
as
means,
coaches how
because
much to
people have
incorporate what we
tried
think that
to
means.
delineate that,
Because
obviously,
people have
from
tried
literary
to
health
delineate
literacy
that,
and
obviously,
nutrition literacy that
functional
they're trying,
health
but it's
literacy,
still-
nutrition literacy that they're trying, but it's
And that
still.
research is going to be disease oriented.
Yeah, and there's a lot more in health literacy.
Well,
Yeah, and there's a lot more in
it's not
health
gonna be the
literacy.
population that you want, because it's
Exactly.
going to be looking at, hey, this kid doesn't know what an orange
Exactly.
is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oranges. Like,
Yeah.
it's completely,
Right.
so the external validity of this stuff
Yeah.
may not apply to your body.
Exactly. It's like the obesity statistics that we're
Exactly.
always
It's
saying,
like
oh my gosh,
the
it's
obesity
so bad,
statistics that we're always throwing up, like, yes,
how
oh
many
my
of
gosh,
us like
it's
work
so bad.
primarily with
How many of us like
population? We
work
got so many
primarily
people that
with
are literally
obese
just
population? population. We got so many more people that are literally just dissatisfied with their body. Like that's our people, and that's not like I was going to incorporate some of that in here, and it's hard.
But how do they
to
measure
It's
the
just a messy.
education?
It's
Because like there's a
terrible.
lot of people that are super smart, and like I've taken classes. And, like,
nutrition.
well, just in general, like in education generally,
nutrition-
like some teachers
Oh, that
just
was
fucking
interesting. I kept
suck.
running into that
And
too.
so like,
Oh, that was
like,
interesting. I kept
gave
running
you the
into that
information,
too.
like, and
Yeah.
so that's just hard to measure. Like unless you have like a teacher rating score of this guy's good and this guy's bad. Just like coaches, they're bad and good coaches. They could run your same system and they would not get results.
Robert just got triggered by using good and bad, but it's fine.
Robert just got triggered by using
It's
good
like
and bad.
the impact of the information you're giving, right? It's the same reason why people will just like, they won't want to do anything, they won't want to cook their food or do anything like that, but they read online from someone they automatically trust that green tea is going to help them burn fat, and they're smashing green tea pills.
It's lit.
Yeah, that was very, very random.
like
That's
that.
it. Like that's what I love to do. That's
Yeah,
totally
that's it. Like
guys
that's
think
what I
that's
love to
fast
do.
food,
That's
but,
what
like, I'm
totally
not-
geeks me the hell out.
I'm glad he's filming it because that way you guys can slow down a little bit.
No coffee. No coffee before you talk. But that's like
You
what.
understand what I mean?
Can I?
That's
Real
kind of
excited.
stuff.
Is like, can I, in as few words and as little information as possible, like get right to the heart of what that person is, like the person will be like, this is why I'm doing this, and like that's what they remember. You know what I mean? Like geeks me out,
Body
man.
dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
I think males and females, one of the big things that's been helpful for that. Like I'll have clients who are 23% body fat as a female and they hate their body.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
so you hate your body. Let's look at an ultrasound of your external oblique and see how much fat you actually have there. And then I'll ultrasound their external oblique. They have 7 millimeters of fat. Like this is what, like, look at a ruler. What's 7 millimeters of fat? You can't change that. You can't change the shape of your hips. You can't change. This is something that you cannot physically change because you're 5'2".
Does it work? Like post? Like,
Are they like, ooh, or are they like, thank you?
I need 6 millimeters.
I spent like little, but
You guys are a lot different. Than
Yeah.
I would show them. I would be
Yeah.
like, look at a ruler. I would be like, all right, so what? Show me the picture of who's your goal? Who are you trying to look like? And they show me someone. I'm like, okay, you have. Is there any opportunity in your life for you to look like that? And they'll come go trip on the truth of no.
Because they're like five, the woman's like 5'9".
Because they're not 6 foot, and that's not who they are as a person, and they don't have that similar waist structure.
Yeah, I like that.
And it's usually if that person, that avatar, has been lifters, female lifters, who have been drawn to lifting because they are strong, and then they want to look like a bikini model.
Yeah.
After they've done all that.
Yeah, for sure.
To be honest, like
Yeah,
there's
well,
another layer
and
of the conversation
to be
here.
honest, like there's another layer of the conversation
that
here,
even made me
because you were the first
consider
person
that,
that even
the
made me
body weight I was
consider
sitting at
that
was,
like the
okay,
body weight I was
and,
sitting
like,
at was like
because in my mind,
okay
I was like,
and like
I own
healthy.
a CrossFit
Because in
gym.
my mind I was
I'm
like,
not jacked and
I own a
lean.
CrossFit
Oh my
gym.
God, like,
I'm not jacked and lean.
forever.
Oh my God, like
You know?
for my, like
And so
forever
you,
as a
literally
coach,
in our
you know.
conversation, you're
And
like,
so
I
you
remember,
like literally
like,
in our conversation, the first time you're like,
reset
I
gut,
remember
and then you
like reset and gut. I think it was all.
And I remember in one of our calls being like,
Good.
I think I would do that.
And I
You're like,
remember in
why?
one of our
And I was
calls
like,
being like, yeah, I think I want to do that. And you're like, why?
You're like, I mean,
And
like,
was like,
your-
what do you mean?
your abs look real good.
You're like, I mean, like, your abs look
good,
real
right?
good.
Yeah.
Like, you feel good, right? And I was like, yeah.
Really non-judgmentally, and I was like,
So like, why? Like, really non-judgmentally. And I was like,
you know, just want to be jacked,
because
bro.
you know,
And that's
I
valid.
want to be jacked.
And now
bro.
I know it completely.
And that's
reframed
valid.
it for me in a sense
And
of,
now
like,
I know it
if I wanna
completely
be cut and
reframed
lean
it
and
for me in a
jacked,
sense of like,
I
if I want to be
really
cut
know
and
the
lean and
trade-offs.
jacked,
And
I
personally, the trade-offs
really
are
know the
pretty high.
trade-offs. And
So
personally, the trade-offs
I
are pretty
reserve
high.
the right. I
So
totally
does
reserve
I
the right
reserve
to,
the
like,
right?
do that at some
I
point.
totally reserve the
But
right to like do that at some
At
point.
various points in my life,
But
I like,
at various
in,
points in
like,
my life,
the, like total
I
cool
like
release
and
of
like
that
the
is
the
so
like
cool.
total cool
And
release
passing
of that
along to
is
my
so
people
cool.
is
And
so
passing that
cool,
along
because
to
I'll
my
have them
people
come
is
to me 9,
so cool
12,
because
whatever
I'll have
months
them
and be
come
like-
to me
or
9,
like,
12,
I'll get a lot
whatever
of,
months and be like,
feedback
or like
upon
I'll get a lot of
graduation at various stages, because
feedback
I
upon
go
graduation at various
level 1 to 6
stages
months, and
because
then
I
they'll
go
be
people
level
level 1 to 6 months and then they'll re-up maybe for level 2 for getting really like sniper precision. And they will say to me, it's very cool to know that if I want to do this, I know what to do. And then most of the time they'll even realize like, yeah, I didn't realize that like I actually don't want to. I really like feeling good. And I'm like,
you can have your goal, but also that's really cool.
I mean,
in
you
a
can have your goals,
population in a
but also
world that
that's
is
really
just
cool.
obsessed
In
with,
a
like,
population, in a world that is
you're
just
not
obsessed
healthy,
with
you're
like,
not optimal if you're not. At
you're
this
not
certain
healthy,
body.
you're not optimal if you're not at this certain body
That's
composition.
awesome.
And
Takes
that
a long time
body
to come to
weight
that,
for females is a lot higher than people.
Exactly.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what
So
clicks
much
for me.
higher.
Exactly.
That's what clicked for me.
That's
You
what
saying
clicks
that,
for
I'm
me.
like, it took me a
That's
long
what
time
clicked for
to,
me. Is you saying that, I was like, it took me a
really
long
authentically
time
be
to
able
like,
believe it, but I tried to
like
keep
really
reinforcing
authentically
it.
be able to believe
And
it,
now I'm
but I
just
tried to
like,
keep reinforcing it. And now I'm just like,
makes so much
well,
so cool. Like that's
of course,
that is
so much
absolutely
is so
not
cool, but
common knowledge,
that is
mainstream,
absolutely not
understanding common knowledge, mainstream, understanding, and we've got coaches out there. But Jack and Lean being like, you don't have to be Jack and Lean to be healthy. And I'm like,
here, sister.
change the message here,
Could be
sister.
brother.
Sorry, you can take that out. Cool.